Hello everybody, how are you going? And welcome to changing a foreign driver's license to a Canadian license. Now obviously for a lot of the world, either be it population or landmass, it may be very similar. You might go, okay, we drive on the right, okay, we drive these cars, but there is also always going to be those people that just go, okay, I've never dealt with the snow, I've never dealt with the wind, the rain, Cougar, whatever you want to be calling it, they just have not dealt with what Canada can throw at them. And so I can only imagine that changing your license over may require some steps.
So with Canada being one of the top destinations for skilled immigrants, an international student, the question for today is, can you convert your international foreign license to a Canadian license without actually doing the knowledge and driver's test? I'll let you know right after the break.
Well, I mean, I would only hope that for some countries you would, because like I said, some countries are going to be pretty darn similar. Even surely all the Western countries can sign something, but I guess hopefully we shall see, because that is nothing that I've ever seen.
So that answer is probably a yes. I mean, just like every good thing in life, there's always a catch. And that catch is, did your country sign a mutual agreement with Canada?
There it is. Yep. Oh man, it would be so fraught with possibilities.
So Canada has signed mutual reciprocal agreement with some countries. Now, depending on the province, that list may vary. They're roughly around 12 to about 15 countries.
Oh man, I mean, we're just starting to see them here, and that just definitely changes things. Even the fact that it isn't a federally approved list is kind of like, okay, yes, this province being Ontario, United States, Australia, at least that's on there, Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Great Britain, Isle of Man, the list goes on clearly. But then if we come back to what was the other one, come on, load it up. Alberta, Australia is number 1. Okay, and then Austria, Belgium, France. So I guess they're going to be probably fairly similar overall. But then why do some countries get excluded entirely? I mean, even in Alberta, the USA isn't included. Oh no, it is. Wait, United States all the way down below. Okay, so we've got his list a bit all over the place, which doesn't help at all. But why is it number 1 and number 14? And then the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland is there. But then if I look at Ontario, I'm not seeing... Oh no, Northern Ireland is there. But then... Great Britain, United Kingdom. Okay, so his list is a little bit all over the place, which does make it a little bit more difficult to compare the pair, so to say. However, looking at this list, it does make me wonder how many of these countries are approved or are left-hand drive countries, because not much of the world drives on the left. But I am also seeing, obviously, you got Australia, that's 1, New Zealand 2, the UK or Great Britain, Japan. So there is actually quite a few. I don't know about France, Austria, Germany. I believe they're all right-hand drive cars, or just driving on the right side of the road, left-hand drive cars. Either way, it definitely does make sense as to why he said possibly yes, maybe not. He couldn't really give a straight answer, because I mean, there are going to be some countries that if you're coming from, I don't know, any country that isn't on these lists, I guess, but that is a lot of countries, be it probably China, I can't imagine is going to be on there. That's a fairly major country with a large population, or India probably doesn't make it onto either of these lists. And so if you are going to be having, especially if you said immigrant and migrant workers coming in by the tens, hundreds, thousands at least, then you are definitely going to have a lot of people that are not going to be licensed as easily. I guess there is no restrictions on them just going through maybe the general appropriate courses to get their own license, but this is just going to be a fast track thing. I would love to know how they figure it out, but for any countries that have, I don't know, particular road rules or requirements or whatever it may be, and I'm certainly not going to be complaining, because I'll take the shortcut, but like I said, that's a lot of people that might have to take the long way.
Now, depending on the province, that list may vary, but they're roughly around 12 to about 15 countries. Well, I'll be showing some of those on the screen, but feel free to go to that region where you're moving to in Canada and have a look and see countries that are supported.
Interesting. Ooh, interesting. I just quickly want to just have a look at this again, because they said, at least in British Columbia, they were a little bit more specific. Like they said South Korea. I hadn't seen that on any other list, but it said not motorcycles. And that is interesting, because I mean, a motorcycle in its own right isn't a transferable skill. As far as I'm aware, a motorcycle is virtually symmetrical of the same everywhere else in the world. I believe you just got the clutch on the left, and then you got the throttle on the right, and then you got brakes and gears and everything like that. They're all in exactly the same orientations and layouts. And so I wonder why, out of everything, for South Korea is not accepted by motorcycles. Either is Taiwan, maybe it is, like I said, there's a certain set of criteria that you need to be passing in South Korea. It just does not mimic the one in Canada whatsoever. And so they go, no, you just cannot be actually meeting our road standards, or maybe it just comes down to the snow. Once again, surely that has to be on people's minds, because to be riding in snow compared to, I mean, I guess Korea gets snow, but Taiwan, I can't imagine gets any snow ever. Really, even just reading Quebec's list in more detail, I mean, actually, I've just realized that Australia is not on there. I mean, they have France, that definitely makes sense, but then they also have Germany and also Great Britain. And then I'm also not seeing the USA, so to not have Australia or the USA or even New Zealand, but then to be having Northern Ireland and Great Britain, that's a weird kind of mix up there. But what I was actually going to be talking about before was the fact that they have Republic of Korea, and then over in British Columbia they have South Korea, and so I can only imagine, and rightly so, he's just gone on to each country and province's list and just gone okay and copy pasted it in. But I'm wondering why they are so different, and even just no USA. Are they out of their mind, or is it just a given?
So what are the documents that you need? First of all, you need a valid driver's license. Full license, sadly. Learner's license and probation license are not supported, so you have to have a full driver's license from any of those countries that have signed a mutual agreement with Canada. So number two, well, you have to show them a history that you've been driving for the past 2 years or more if you want to get a full license here in Canada. How do you do that? Well, for most people, they're lucky. Their license actually has a date of first issue, while for some other people, your driver's license may not contain this information.
Wow.
Just like me, my Australian driver's license doesn't actually show the date of first issue. How do you go around that? Well,
true, actually. I mean, he's just about to elaborate further, but I was just thinking, oh yes, well, the license in Australia would have everything, but clearly it does not. Interesting. I mean, even the fact that, honestly, I didn't even pick up on the fact that this guy might be Australian. I mean, he mentioned something about people. I just went, wow, that is very, very particular for him to be knowing that. But hey, if he's done his research, that is fair enough. But then it also now is all falling into line going, yes, that is the system that he's been, I guess, born and raised in, so to say. And so no wonder he would know about it. But then, of course, now he has his full license, which would mean that he has been driving for at least 2.5 years, I believe, if you're over 25. Otherwise, there's going to be 4. And plenty hours and experience just to be able to get that license in the first place. But Canada doesn't care about anything but the full license. And so, yeah, how do you possibly prove that? I mean, I guess, like I said, they're going to have it on file. And so maybe you just have to just search it up and they give it to you, or really... Actually, now I'm wondering, is this to actually transfer? As the title does say, changing a foreign driver's license to a Canadian license does not mean that to even go and drive in Canada at all that you need to be changing this over. And so I wonder how that works. Can you drive in Canada at all? Can you get an international license? Or do you need to actually go through this entire rigmarole?
My Australian driver's license doesn't actually show the date of first issue. How do you go around that? Well, you have to get an abstract. That is your driver's history record.
Yes.
In Australia, in New South Wales, that's a request that you can get online. It has to show the date of first issue if you want to get a full license here in Canada.
Where are you going?
So the third requirement is proof of residency in that particular province. So you have to let them know, show them proof that you actually live in that province. In Alberta, for example, the documents that are accepted include your tenancy agreement, your utility bill, so that's water, light, telephone bills, showing your name and your address.
That makes sense. There would be no point in them going through the entire process, and even you going through the entire process, and just to find out that you live in Quebec when you're actually trying to apparently live in BC, whatever it may be. I guess even especially if the list is changing, then for some countries it's going to be approved much easier, and for others it's going to not be. All of those kind of nuanced differences can make the difference, and so it definitely makes sense as to why they want to know what you're going to be doing with it and why you're even here and all those kind of things. I mean, a license is certainly not just a throwaway kind of documentation. The only question that I do have, however, is let's say you were 17, 18, 19, or maybe even 23, 24, and you moved overseas, maybe with your parents, into your grandparents, into whoever else relatives you know, so you don't have a tenancy agreement because you're not renting. You might not be paying any utilities bills, and so you don't have any of that. And if you're just going to be maybe semi-permanently staying, I mean, I don't know if that really applies then, but let's say you want a license and you don't have any of those things, then what can you possibly be using? Because you just go, okay, I'm young, I don't have this or this or this or this, and they go, well, sorry, you just can't drive here. And maybe that is just what it is. And that would be pretty ruthless overall, just going from, yeah, I can drive around my own country, but I just go maybe even 5Ks over the border if you live in the USA. And what was it, BC? No, Quebec doesn't even accept you. And then all of a sudden, you just can't drive on basically the same roads.
So the final document they will require is your proof of residence here in Canada to show that you're legally allowed to live in Canada. This document includes your permanent residency card, your confirmation of permanent residency if you're still waiting for your PR card. It might also include your student visa, your work permit, whatever visa that lets you legally stay in Canada.
Okay, fair enough. Ooh, cost. Surely it's not too much.
So the final cost may vary by province, but here in Alberta, for the first application, that is going to cost you between 90 to 95 Canadian dollars, and that is going to be for 5 years, right? That's all they do, so 5 years license that you can pay for.
Honestly, I reckon that is a pretty darn good deal just to have a valid license for 5 years for only $90. That is, honestly a steal in comparison to, let's just say that Australian and Canadian dollars are the same. Comparatively, yes, Australia does offer 1, 2, 5, and 10, I think, with an asterisk of the 10, but those kind of licenses over the years, but they are definitely not only $90. I mean, even just upgrading your license class, which doesn't extend it, can cost like 30, 40, 50, 60 bucks, let alone if you're just actually going for a renewal, it might be 350, $600 for the 10-year one, which is a big difference compared to 90. I mean, to be honest, I'm certainly not complaining about it whatsoever. I think that is a much more reasonable fee because Australia loves to just slap what, I don't know if the world has it, but we call it stamp duty, so to say, which really, in the age of computers that we live in now, should just be basically abolished. No one has to sit there with a book just filling out all this stuff. No, you just go in the system, which you're already in, they tick a box, and you're on your way. But no, that'd be $500 for that 2-second change. But I mean, look, at least we did finally have a fairly straightforward step, as you were definitely going to be having one of those 4 things right there. I mean, even the fact that, let's just take what I was talking about, if you're not having utility bills and all these different things, at least you're going to either have a work permit or a student visa, if nothing else. And so at least that part is covered. You don't have to worry about it. I'm sure you will have that. It's just like I said, how do you actually get it across the line with number 3 in particular? Because the other ones were fine. If you already have a license, you already know how to drive, cool. If you're old enough to be driving for 2 years, that's sweet. Otherwise, you just need to maybe open a bank, but then they're probably going to want a license to be able to validate your identity, and you're going to be going round and round and round and round in circles.
Well, you have to check if your country has signed a mutual agreement with Canada. If that is yes, tick. Get all the requirements that you need, tick. Find the nearest registry office around you, go over there. The process is pretty simple. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes.
Fair enough.
And of course, if there are people, then you might have to wait on the queue.
Yeah.
Now, be mindful too as well that for a lot of the people working in the registry office, converting foreign license to Canadian license is something that they don't do from a day-to-day perspective. In my scenario, my own case, they had to get a supervisor, and that took a while for them to figure out how to convert my Australian driver's license to a Canadian license.
Okay. I mean, processing time is going to be one thing. I can only imagine, like I said, in the digital age, surely it can just be, yep, done. Just talk to the Australian federal whatever and just get it done if you really need to. But I'm surprised that it isn't something that they do every day. Just like you said, having the amount of volume of international migrants and student working visas and all those things just flooding into Canada. How is it not something that not every day, not every person, but at least maybe if you had 2 a week, 1 a week even, you would definitely keep your currency up in that regard, just going, oh, I don't have to call the manager. I did this just a couple of days ago. It'll just take me a second. No worries. Let alone if you're one of the poor buggers that it doesn't have their country signed up to this entire agreement. Man, the amount of extra paperwork and time and everything that would probably take, an extra digging that the receptionist or facilitator will probably have to do, especially if he's saying that they don't do it every day. Whew, I do not want to be those kind of people, because that sounds like you're just going to be digging yourself a hole. That, like I said, you're going to need a driver's license in order to get a bank statement, and in order to get the bank statement, you're going to need a residency, and in order to get a residency, you're going to need to have a bank statement, and it just goes round and round and round, and you just go, I don't know what I'm meant to do here. Please just sign something that enables me to get something, and at least I can get this process started.
Now, be sure you provide the right mailing address, because your license will be posted to your mailing address. Now, the question is, what do you do after you've submitted your license to the Canadian Registry Office? You'll be provided an interim driver's license that let you drive in Canada for a month, pending when your official driver's license will be posted to your home address. Now, it takes about 2 to 4 weeks to get your license. For me, I waited for 2 weeks and it arrived in the mailbox.
Yeah. Additional info. Oh, surely this. I mean, additional info is going to be a massive list, but I want to have a look at this license because realistically, you don't get to see many other people's licenses unless you were literally just searching them up. Interesting as well, the fact that I know it's a USA thing and I'm sure other countries, but also the height and the weight is listed on the actual license. And I know for a fact that no Australian license that I've ever seen or heard of has ever had anything like that. I mean, even the fact that if I pull them up in editing and put the licenses right next to one another, you can see that there's, I guess, different layouts in terms of color. Australia loves the big block color, but then they print the photo in color, and this one, Alberta's at least, isn't. So I wonder, first of all, how it differs from province to province and how the licenses are different. Maybe the application process may be different, and even just how it actually presents itself in the end. And then also, I think that Australian licenses are fairly similar in how they're designed, but honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Now, also remember to make photocopies of your license, and that is because they will not return your foreign license back to you. That will be kept by the Canadian government forever. Remember, depending on the province, you're allowed to drive with your foreign license here in Canada for about 30 and sometimes all the way up to 12 months. But however, if you do plan to stay in Canada for more than a year, I'll recommend you get the international driver's license that let you drive for 1 year to avoid any complication based on the province that you might be going to.
I mean, look, that part completely makes sense. I can understand getting an international driver's license may help just smooth out the bumps and kind of the in-between factors, but I still can't believe that they confiscate your original license. I mean, I know that they're saying that you're going to be living there, but generally people do like to go back to their home countries, even if it's just for a holiday, to visit family. And what do you do then? Do you just not have a license? I mean, at least now you can get a digital license, and so on your phone it would still be valid, but still, to be handing over your real license just going, yep, don't need this anymore entirely, seems a little bit extreme. Like, it has nothing to do with them. I can understand if they just made sure that you don't use that one and hand this one over to the police, make sure that you use this one, but that's on the person. That's not on the government or the entire body to just enforce. I do not understand why you have to be making a copy of your license and a photocopy just so they don't completely get rid of all records of it. It makes no sense to me. Why would you possibly do that? Now I'm even just wondering, would they ever give it back? I mean, let's just say you got your license, you got everything in order, but you never actually got permanent residency, and so you just get forced to go back to home where you were born. But then do you just not have your license, your plastic license anymore? I mean, it may well be expired by then and you just have to get another one. But still, do they give it back to you? Because they said they confiscate it, but does it just get completely eradicated from existence? Or do they just have some warehouse somewhere buried under a mountain and they literally just have a mountain, this pile of international licenses that could go to the moon? Oh, I would love to know all of these kind of things, because that part out of this entire video has thrown me for a loop. I do not understand why they would ever need to enforce that kind of a law, as like I said, it just shouldn't or doesn't really concern them what the original license is. I mean, yes, you have a new one, but it's not even like you have a dual citizenship passport and they confiscate your first one. You can have two at a time. People do know when and where to be using each passport, but apparently a license is just a class above. You wouldn't possibly know what to do with it. And so yeah, I guess overall it seems like if you're the lucky few, it should be fairly smooth sailing. As long as you can get everything in order, you have a tenancy and you can have some bank statements, just go in, rock in 10-15 minutes. But I feel as though for a lot of people it would be very fraught with danger, and so maybe just looking at the international license would be better overall. I mean, it might not go forever, but at least you can just go to your heart's content for the time being.